Hey, everybody, in today's episode, if you have been skeptical of Alcoholics Anonymous, or if you know somebody that is skeptical of Alcoholics Anonymous, have you ever heard those AA people, that's a cult? They're crazy. They don't know what they're doing. This episode is for you. I'm referencing a study by Stanford of all places, that say Alcoholics Anonymous is far more effective than anything else out there. Doesn't mean that it's the only way, but you can save yourself a lot of heartache if you just take the plunge, go into an AA meeting. We talk about all that and more. Enjoy the show. Here we are, Real Recovery Talk. I am your host, Tom Conrad. In today's episode, we've got Dr. T.
Hello, everyone.
First things first, thank you for tuning in to the podcast app, whichever one that you choose to use, and thank you for watching on YouTube. In the end, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, you could always reach us, info@realrecoverytalk.com. Again, that's info@realrecoverytalk.com. And ultimately, we want to help you turn your mess into your message, right, T?
That's right.
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. I got a study I want to bring up.
Let's do it.
It's pretty interesting. Another checkbox for Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, a lot of times we get blowback from people that say, oh, Alcoholics Anonymous is a cult. Oh, you people are crazy. Oh, you know, you could just stop drinking and it's all about willpower. And then you also hear this coming from therapists, psychiatrists, psychologists, doctors. No offense, but, you know, a lot of times people want to try and treat alcoholism in some sort of like proprietary way. And in reality, the vast majority of people can just go to Alcoholics Anonymous.
Agree with that.
And this study proves it.
I don't know if it proves it. It argues it. But
so let me ask you this. Let me just read the first couple sentences of the study. So this is Stanford, by the way. Stanford Medical. Alcoholics Anonymous, most effective path to alcohol abstinence. That's the title. A Stanford researcher and two collaborators conducted an extensive review of Alcoholics Anonymous studies and found that the fellowship helps more people achieve sobriety than therapy does. Initial thoughts.
From a medical perspective or from a normal person perspective?
Both. Intertwine both of them.
Well, I have a skewed bias because I work in the field, right? So if I think back where I was before I learned what I learned, I don't know how I would feel about that because I was never educated on Alcoholics Anonymous. Even going through medical school, you know, when you're learning about addiction, they don't teach you like what is AA, what is NA. These things are like things I was curious about that I had to learn about on my own. So, you know, when you have a study like that come out, you ask yourself, like, what type of trial was it, under what circumstances, and what the outcomes were. But as, you know, from a strictly medical perspective, like whether you're a therapist or a doctor, I think we're always taught the scientific way rather than, you know, the everyday way that people see it. So we learn a lot about cognitive behavioral therapy, and it's kind of what they push down your throat. They don't teach you about like what else is out there. So
why do you think that is?
Because it has the most scientific data behind it.
And who?
Randomized, controlled clinical trials, research, you know, that's where all of the research was done and put behind.
See, and this is where I draw an issue with this, and I understand what you're saying as a doctor, meaning you, not me. A lot of times people want to reference the science and the studies and this and that, and this is where a randomized controlled study and all these things. But I always ask, and I'm not one to go into PubMed and research, you know, studies and stuff like that. In fact, I never do. But I always posed a question of who funds these studies.
Agreed.
And I think that's something that, it's really frustrating to hear, even from you, that you spend, for sake of this conversation, between undergrad, graduate, undergraduate, master's, graduate program, whatever, residency, never once were you taught about any sort of 12-step program. When this study will very clearly identify that it's one of, if not the most effective path to treating somebody's alcoholism. So it leaves me to kind of speculate. That's when I want to put my tinfoil hat on and see, well, why is this? Why do people, if we know what the answer is, and Alcoholics Anonymous in and of itself was just started by some random men back in 1935.
Not to mention one of them was a physician.
Dr. Bob.
Exactly. So I'm team Alcoholics Anonymous, but I'm on that team because I've learned what I've learned over the years, obviously going through it as from a daughter of someone who had an addiction, but because of the field that we work in, and the field and the patients taught me a lot about it. And I'm very grateful for that. And that's why now I educate other physicians and providers, because I know that, I still mentor people who are going through the same residency program that I went through. And we often talk about these things, and it's on me now to educate the next generation coming up. That's why I do this.
Yeah, I mean, it is part of the fighting force of the podcast, to bring attention and awareness to this stuff, because it's not like we have all the answers.
Right. But
we do have a pretty good grasp on what works. So I just wanted to read a couple of pieces out of this study and dissect them a little bit. So it says, after evaluating 35 studies involving the work of 145 scientists and the outcomes of 10,080 participants, Keith Humphreys, PhD, professor of psychiatry and behavioral sciences, and his fellow investigators determined that AA was nearly always found to be more effective than psychotherapy in achieving abstinence. Abstinence meaning free and clear of booze, for the sake of this conversation. In addition, most studies showed that AA participation lowered healthcare costs. That perks my ears, because when you lower healthcare costs, again, tinfoil hat Tommy, you lower healthcare costs, pharmaceutical companies aren't making money, hospitals aren't making money, physicians aren't making as much money. And I'm not saying that all physicians are bad, or that the pharmaceutical companies have it out for us, so on and so forth. But I do think that there is motivation behind, well, why would we want to bring this? Because this doesn't make anybody money. When you walk into an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, the only thing it costs you, if you have it, when they pass the basket around, if you could put $1 or $2 in it, you put $1 or $2 in it, because Alcoholics Anonymous is self-supporting. There's no funding. There's no, hedge funds. There's no hospital groups. There's no pharmaceutical companies backing AA. It's made up of simply men and women who have a desire to stop drinking. And if I have $5 in my pocket and I can afford to put $1 in the basket, I'm going to do it.
Right.
AA works because it's based on social interactions, Humphrey said, noting that members give one another emotional support, as well as practical tips to refrain from drinking. If you want to change your behavior, find some other people who are trying to make the same change, he said. All right, so let's riff on this for a minute. What do I talk about primarily when it comes to getting sober? What do you need the most of?
Community.
Community, why?
Because you need that support to get through it. You can't just be alone. You have to have an outlet. You have to, when you're struggling, you have to be able to lean on others to get you through, and for you to be able to, and I think about it from a medical perspective, like, and I get people all the time. I'm really approachable physician, right? But I still, to this day, when I meet patients, they're like, are you in recovery yourself? I get that, that wall put up, and, no, I'm not in recovery, but I'm a daughter of someone who suffered from addiction. Well, you have no idea. You shouldn't be treating me because you don't know what it's like to be in my shoes, and I don't want you to tell me what to do. So there's still that divide there, and it's really hard for some people to trust me because I haven't gone through the things that they've been through, and I do sympathize and empathize with them on that. I get where they're coming from.
Yeah.
So with relation to community and having that support, in order for them to make connection with other people to help them through what they're going through, I think it's really important.
Yeah. And we hear that a lot too. And even with like a therapist that works in the substance abuse space, I guarantee you, if we walked over there right now and asked Nicole, Meyer, Hannah, if I give you 10 clients, how many of those 10 clients are going to ask you are you in recovery? 8 of which are they would probably say 80%, 8 out of 10 clients are going to ask us if we're in recovery on a personal level. And I always tell people that's entirely up to you, however you want to answer that. Some therapists are totally fine. I know Maya is very open about her recovery, and I've met therapists that they don't want to bring that into the equation. But ultimately, when an addict is asking that question, it's generally one of two things. It's either one, because they're looking to poke holes in things and they ultimately don't want to do any work. And so they're going to use that as an excuse. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, you can't relate to me, therefore I'm just going to put a big wall up. Mm-hmm. Or they're looking for some sort of connection. And there are many situations / circumstances where if you put an addict in front of me and you have all the credentials. You're a medical doctor. You've gone through uber amounts of schooling, very book smart, present well. You're a lot prettier than I am. Mm-hmm. All signs lead to they would want to work with you. But a vast majority of them would probably choose me because I can relate to them on that level. Doesn't mean that you're any less or more qualified than I am.
Right.
Some people are going to choose you just because they'd rather look at you for an hour than look at me. Right. But addicts and alcoholics are looking for connection, and that is something, and Maya says this all the time, the opposite of addiction is connection. And I think that is one of the biggest contributing factors to the success of Alcoholics Anonymous is by way of connection / community. That's why I bark this all the time on the podcast. If nothing else, go into meetings, meet people, network with people, build friendships. I think that is more important. And some people out there would send me hate mail for this. I think it's more important than the steps. I think it's more important than service work. I think it's more important than anything. If all else fails, you go to that meeting. Now, you go into the meeting. I've met people that go into meetings and they have no plan on working steps. They have no plan on serving coffee, setting up the meeting, tearing down the meeting, sweeping the floors. They have no plan of this. All they want to do is go there because maybe the courts are telling them to. And they go in there and they meet that one person. And that one person introduces them to 2 other people. Next thing you know, they have a dozen people in their corner that have been sober. That one person, by way of building that community, is organically going to want to work the steps. They're going to want to start doing the service work.
All right.
And then they're going to want to take another alcoholic through the steps. That's how this all works. So,
yeah. And not for nothing too, we also talk a lot about like structure, and the awesome thing about AA is that you can go basically, almost any time of the day, any place that you think of, even the airport, right? So that someone is going to be there for you all the time. And you can even make structure out of it with your days and your week ahead of time to make sure you're going to your meetings and doing the things that you need to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't get that with therapy, right? It's maybe once a week. And oftentimes nowadays it's out of pocket and it's very expensive.
Yeah. And if you're fortunate enough to have private health insurance, then you find a therapist that's contracted with your insurance provider. And a lot of times, and this is not a blanket statement, but in my opinion, based off my therapist, I have a therapist. He doesn't take insurance because he doesn't need to take insurance. He has a full book of business. If I miss a session with him, I'm not seeing him for 3 weeks. Therapists that are contracted with insurance companies, a lot of times it's new upcoming therapists, they're trying to just make some money, and there's nothing wrong with that. But a lot of therapists that have been doing it for years and years and years,
right,
they're strictly cash pay. And I'll tell you, and I'm transparent on here, my therapist costs $190 per session. His prices have gone up. He's $250 an hour. The only reason I'm at $190 is because I've been seeing him for the better part of 6 years. And it's not because I need to, Dr. T.
I didn't even say anything.
I saw that look.
I didn't say anything. But I think there's so much more to get out of AA than just seeing a therapist once weekly. Often, how many times, and I've been to a therapist as well, how many times have you met with someone and you're like, this isn't going to work, and you go through different therapists, whereas if you go to different AA meetings, you're surrounded by tons of people and you're going to make a connection with someone quickly, and you have vast more opportunity. And you're going to, like you said, you're going to meet, it's a snowball effect. You're going to meet people you connect with that you can essentially unload what you're going through. They'll listen to you. They'll offer feedback and support. And there's a lot of things you can get out of AA, I think, more so than you can just doing therapy once a week.
Right.
And you're going to make faster progress and more progress with AA than I think you will a therapist.
Well, if you see a therapist, let's just call that an outpatient level of care. There's no accountability. And that's another piece of AA that people tend to shy or gloss over. I think a lot of people in the the medical side, the therapist, the psychiatrist, the psychologist, they'll gloss over the accountability piece.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't have that. That's why I tell people that when I'm talking to parents and loved ones that are seeking treatment for their son or daughter or spouse or whomever, sometimes they'll call and say, hey, can my son do IOP or outpatient with you guys? And I'll unpack and kind of get more of the situation. And turns out, they're actively drinking, but they can't do a higher level of care because, I don't know, fill in the blank, some dumb reason. Oh, they got a job at Wendy's and they really like this job, so we're looking for an outpatient level of care. It's like you're bypassing essentially 3 levels of care. You're bypassing detox, you're bypassing residential, and you're bypassing PHP/inpatient. You're bypassing those to go to outpatient where there's zero accountability, So that's a big piece of it as well. Further in this article, something else that stuck out to me, though well known, AA faces skepticism. Although AA is well known and used by millions around the world, mental health professionals are sometimes skeptical of its effectiveness, Humphrey says. Psychologists and psychiatrists trained to provide cognitive behavioral therapy and motivational enhancement therapy to treat patients with alcohol use disorder can have a hard time admitting that the lay people who run AA groups do a better job of getting people on the wagon. So a couple things in here. First off, motivational enhancement therapy, motivational interviewing.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah. Dr. T, where do you envision yourself 5 years from now? Fill in the blank. I want to be whatever. I want to be a doctor. Okay, what are the steps that we can take to get there? Stuff like that. That's motivational interviewing.
Like there's ORs, open-ended questions, affirmations, reflection, summarization. It's just having a positive conversation, trying to enable the person that needs help in a more positive environment and positive fashion to get to the goal that the person wants.
Yeah, you're helping them recognize that, oh, okay, what seemed to be not achievable, there's actually a path towards this, and it motivates them to achieve that. And then the cognitive behavioral therapy, it's just another form of therapy. But they can have a hard time admitting lay people who run AA groups do a better job of keeping people on the wagon. On the wagon means sober.
That's ego.
Straight ego.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, I don't want to air out your financials, but give a rough estimate of what a medical degree costs from beginning to end for a typical average, American man or woman that wants to become a doctor or a psychiatrist. What roughly is that going to cost?
It depends, but I had a scholarship for undergrad.
All right, well, let's assume you didn't.
Okay. Well, if you it goes in-state versus out-state, I would say around $500,000.
$500,000? Is that real?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Can you get it any cheaper?
It just depends what schools you go to.
Okay.
It really does, but I would say people have between $300,000 and $500,000 worth of student loan debt if their parents can't afford it.
And then I wonder on average how long that takes to pay back. What's the average median salary of a physician?
Oof, that's a tough question. I would say $300,000.
Yeah.
A year. And there's programs like I did, 10-year loan forgiveness, like public service loan forgiveness, but you still have to pay back every month. You still have to make a monthly payment, but I would say...
Wait, your loan got forgiven, but you still have to pay?
No. While like those 10 years while you're giving your public service, you still have to make monthly payments.
Do they give it back to you?
No. No, it just goes towards,
So whatever your loan amount is at the end of 10 years, that's what they wipe away?
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's
loans
cool.
plus interest. But most people you'll hear that it probably takes 20 years.
To pay back.
Mm-hmm.
So you graduate, you're a doctor at best, what, 30?
32, 33.
33 years old?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're paying off your loans until your mid-50s.
Mm-hmm. Some people like refinance it like a mortgage into like a 30-year, loan at 5%. 'Cause it's expensive to live now. And to be quite honest, people think physicians make a lot of money, but a lot of other people make way more money.
Oh, yeah.
Finance, things like that. So,
yeah. Well, and I think if you look, though, at people most of the time, like, and you've shared on this before, the reason you became a physician wasn't to make the money.
No, yeah.
It was
can't be the reason.
Yeah, exactly. It's, to give back and help people. But at any rate, the reason I bring that up is because you can understand why the ego would get involved in this.
Mm-hmm.
How can you tell me that Tom, who barely graduated with an associate's degree from Allegheny County Community College, and it took me 10 years to get an associate's degree, mind you.
Okay.
Tom has more effectiveness getting somebody sober than myself, who spent 12 years in school, $500,000 in debt, all the studies and the this and the journals of medicines and all the books and all this stuff. I have all the brain knowledge, but Tom can get this person sober before I can. That's a huge, like, ego blow.
Oh, definitely.
So, again,
And people will fight you tooth and nail for that.
Yeah.
I think it's very humbling.
It says in here, early in his career, Humphreys said he dismissed AA, thinking, how dare these people do things that I have all these degrees to do? Humphreys noted that counseling can be designed to facilitate engagement with AA. What he described as an extended warm handoff into the fellowship. For the review article, Humphreys and his colleagues evaluated both AA and 12-step facilitation counseling. AA began in 1935 when two men in Akron, Ohio were searching for a way to stay sober. They found it by forming a support group. They later developed the 12 steps, the first being accepting one's ability to control drinking, the last helping others sustain sobriety by becoming a sponsor of a new member. The AA model, open to all and free, has spread around the globe, and AA now boasts over 2 million members in 180 nations and more than 118,000 groups. Though the fellowship has been around for more than 8 decades, researchers have only recently developed good methods of measure for effectiveness. For the Cochrane Review, the researchers found 57 studies on AA. Of those, 35 passed their rigorous criteria for quality. The studies used various methods of measure to measure AA's effectiveness on alcohol use disorder, the length of time participants abstained from alcohol, the amount they reduced their drinking, if they continued drinking, the consequences of their drinking, and healthcare costs. Most of the studies that measured abstinence found AA was significantly better than other interventions or no intervention. In one study, it found to be 60% more effective. None of the studies found AA to be less effective. So, here's an interesting one. One found that AA and 12-step facilitation counseling reduced mental health costs by $10,000 per person.
It could mental health and physical health costs tremendously.
And I'll link this article so you can pull it up yourself. Now, this article is from 2020, so it is 4 years old. But in the grand scheme of things, AA has been around for almost 100 years now. So let's just wrap it up with this. Everything that we just said isn't saying that AA is the only way.
Mm-hmm.
We're not poo-pooing therapists.
No.
We're not poo-pooing doctors, psychiatrists, psychologists, licensed mental health counselors, licensed clinical social workers, licensed marriage and family therapists. Everybody plays a part in this. And let's talk about this for a minute. What we have found to be the best in terms of highest success rate is a blend of all of it.
Mm-hmm.
So if somebody comes here to Rock Recovery Center, I'll ask you this. What do they have access to based off of everything that we covered? What does a typical client here have access to?
In terms of personnel, groups, all of that?
All of it.
They have access to everything. They have access to therapists who provide all different types of therapy, including cognitive behavioral therapy.
And motivational interviewing.
Yep.
And EMDR,
mm-hmm.
which is eye movement desensitization and restoration, number one form of trauma therapy.
Right. They have access to me as their physician / addictionologist. They have access to each other in their groups that they do every day. They have access to groups outside of here, AA, NA, Smart Recovery. They have access to all of that. They have access to exercise therapy. They have access to to you and Ben, so to mentors, that they look a lot. All of our clients look up to you guys.
Yeah.
A lot of them do. They have access to everything here. So it's not a one size fits all. It's there. The option is there, and each person will make their journey what they want it to be. And I tell them all the time, this is here for you, and whatever you have to put in, and whatever you take out of it is what you put in. You could put in nothing and coast through and complete and go back to doing the same cycle over and over again, or you can really put in the work and do what you need to do and successfully live your life of sobriety.
Yeah.
It's on you. You have to do it. We're just here to help.
We provide the platform. We provide the tools, the infrastructure. I couldn't add anything more to what you said. What I would say in addition to is that you don't have to do all of it. So out of the things that you named, licensed therapists, Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, exercise, proper nutrition, proper sleep, transportation to and from all of your groups and individual sessions, access to medical staff. It's not like you have to come in here and be willing to do all of it. We have people that come in here that honestly, they scoff at working out. Totally fine. We've had people that come in here and they scoff at Alcoholics Anonymous. Totally fine. But what are you going to do in replacement of? We recently had a client in here that he could not jive with AA. And we said, that's fine. This is what we do. We transport to and from AA meetings. If you want to transport yourself to and from a different meeting, go ahead. And that's what he did. He got involved in Smart Recovery.
Right.
He just recently transitioned. He completed 90 days here. He was consistently doing his Smart Recovery meetings. He just transitioned back to California, and he checked in with us a couple days ago, and he's doing good. And he's going there and going to start his own Smart Recovery meeting because I guess it's not very prevalent there.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. Joe.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great.
So, and his sister listens to the podcast. So,
he's a good dude.
Yeah. Good. But he's a good example. He didn't jive with AA, started Smart Recovery, but you know how much weight that dude lost while he was here?
Oh, he lost so much weight. Last time I saw him, I was like, oh my gosh, you look so good.
38 pounds he lost while he was here. This guy took everything that we had to offer. He took 90% of it. The only thing he couldn't jive with was AA. And I said, Joe, you're doing everything else. Try something. Because what you have to do is figure out what's going to separate you from the drink when you go back to California. And if you don't have community, the gym isn't community. Eating healthy isn't community. You have to get people in your corner. So he went back and is implementing, Smart Recovery back there. But he's an example of somebody that, took advantage of the gym, took advantage of therapy, took advantage of the transportation to and from, took advantage of the people around him. Like, he was a true asset to the community. And that's what we try and provide here. Everybody that's here, they want to be sober. We don't have time for the people that don't. Like, I understand, like, if you're somewhat on the fence, we'll welcome you in. But generally speaking, if they don't want to be sober, they're very short-lived here.
They weed themselves out, and they'll let you know, like, I'm just not ready to be sober. And sometimes you just have to accept that. You can't force people into sobriety, and one day they'll look back at their experiences and they'll remember that.
Yeah. So that was fun, T.
I like this.
Another win for Alcoholics Anonymous. We should have had Eric.
I love
on
it.
This. Yeah, we should have had Eric on this show.
Episode.
But fun fact, we are going to be starting in the next few weeks. And over the history of this podcast, the only thing that I have been consistent on is making sure that we have an episode out when we say we're going to do it. But there have been some things that I've been less consistent on. Like there was a period of time, probably 3 to 6 months ago, where I was doing a live every day for the daily reflection, and that lasted about 10 days. So I wasn't consistent there. What we're working on right now, and I want to bring this up now, that way it'll give people a few weeks to kind of prepare for this. Eric, who works here with us at Rock Recovery Center, he's a staple member of our team. He does a lot of reels. Like, so if you don't follow me on Instagram, Real Recovery Talk Tom, and also Real Recovery Talk Ben, Dr. T's not down with the social media, but that's okay. We're going to be going live every Monday, and Eric is going to be doing a big book study. And I've never met somebody that can break the book down like this man. And he breaks it down line by line. So he does a local meeting here in Palm Beach County every Thursday night, and it's standing room only. 100 people or more are there, and a ton of people have been requesting him to do more, but obviously you can't. So we're going to be doing it here as part of Real Recovery Talk. It's going to be every Monday at 5:00. So keep an eye out for that. If you haven't already, subscribe or get on our email list. And the way that you can do that is go to realrecoverytalk.com/guides. You're going to find 5 or 6 guides. They're a catalog of guides that we have. realrecoverytalk.com/guides. Pick which one that you want and put your email in, and then download the guide. That puts you in our email funnel. And what we'll do is we'll update you through that. We're not going to spam you. We're not going to give you a bunch of baloney. Any emails that you receive from us are going to be legit pieces of content that we think are relevant.
Or they can go to the Facebook group and request access.
Yes.
And then they can put their input their email there.
That I would actually prefer. Go to Facebook and join our Facebook group, which is called the Sobriety Network. And that is just basically welcome to anybody and everybody that's been affected by addiction in one way or another, whether it's for yourself or a loved one. We want to have you in there. Tambini's posting her workout reels in there, putting everybody to shame. And I'm kind of in the background,
waiting for yours.
Yeah, monitoring it. And no, I contribute. And Ben puts a lot of his reels up in there, and we have a good community in there. I think we're up to close to 600 people in there now. So, but we're all active in it. There's a lot of Facebook groups out there that have 50,000 members and stuff like that, but it's like,
it's not personal.
Nobody knows anybody,
right?
And don't get me wrong. I hope that we can get that big someday, but honestly, I don't care. We want to be able to provide people with good content, quality stuff. And so anyways, be on the lookout for that. And make sure you get on our email list so you can get the updates for that. And we'll obviously keep you updated through the podcast, through YouTube. Yeah, that's about it. Am I missing anything?
No, that's it for now.
If you want to schedule a call with either myself, you, or Ben, you could do that at realrecoverytalk.com/services. And basically you get a 1-hour conversation with us. You do got to pay. But sorry, there's only so many hours in a day, T.
Right.
And Dr. T got medical bills she got to pay. Just kidding. Those got forgiven, evidently. But that's good. Congratulations on that.
Thanks.
Yeah. So, anything else?
No, that's it.
All right. That is it for this episode of Real Recovery Talk. Thank you for tuning in. In the end, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, you can always reach us, info@realrecoverytalk.com. Again, that's info@realrecoverytalk.com. And ultimately, we want to help you turn your mess into your message. That is it. We will see y'all later.